Hey, Matt, how you doing?
How's it going?
Hey, are you,
Yes.
when you coming up today?
I have to actually be downtown earlier today, so there's no way that I could come up there this morning.
Okay, sure.
Go up there again for practice.
Okay, sure. All right, yeah. So,
So I was planning on 6. I might be a little bit behind that, but I'm going to get there as close to 6 as I can.
okay, that would be good. Yeah, that'd be cool. And hey, just a quick, that's okay, quick question for you. So I have a picture. Hey, hello there.
Good, how you doing?
Hold on a second here. Check your mute.
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Somebody else is on mute.
Let's see.
Yeah, there's Jay. Okay. You want to check your mute? Oh, well, anyway, I was just going to ask how to share a picture from the share screen. Hey, Jay.
Hey, Jude. What's up, Michael?
You want me on a Zoom meeting?
Yeah, if you can. It's going to be pretty crazy, I'll tell you that. Jay, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine, Jude.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me, Jay?
Okay, what do I do?
Yeah, I can hear you. A little delay on you,
I
Michael.
can't hear them.
Turn up your volume.
Okay, that's up. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Keep talking. No?
Hey, Vicky. Can you hear me, Jude? Test 1, 2.
Well, it says the green mute thing is, I mean, it's, you know, it's not the red through it. And
Okay.
my speaker's up.
That's just a microphone. Okay.
Let's see.
And you can't hear what anybody's saying?
No. And they're not. Vicky, could you say hi for a second?
Hi.
Yeah. Oh, dude, my bad. I had my headphones plugged in.
Hi, Jude.
There you are. Oh my gosh. Okay, Matt, we'll talk soon. Okay, bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey. Okay.
Beauty, Jude.
Hey, so did you guys connect through the going to Confluence page and then hitting that connection?
Yeah, right off the email you sent out where it said connect, boom, hit that, and right here I am.
So you right off the ILI page. But
No,
how-
the
through the
email that
email.
you sent out.
okay, so the email. So how about Confluence page? Anybody do it that way on there? Becky?
I did.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Hey, Becky.
Hey.
Hey. Hi. Okay, I'm gonna okay, let me see. Okay. Who has that email right in front of you?
I can get to it. What do you need?
Okay, I might have you send it to this guy on his phone, Cliff. He's going to be one of our guest speakers today. Let me see.
He's just clicking in now.
Is he?
There he is. There's Cliff.
Okay, who's letting everybody on? Because I'm not. Is that you, Cindy Arocha, doing that?
Yours is set up to just click on that link, and so we got right in. There's no administrator that has.
Okay.
There's no waiting room.
Oh, okay. It just goes right on. Hey, there's my buddy Cliff. How are you, man? Check your mute, Cliff.
There you go.
There you go. All right. Can you turn your volume up a little bit more, Cliff? Hey, I have my sister Becky on, and there's my little brother Joe on.
And Mike's here too.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Joe. Hey. All right. All right. Yeah, we'll wait. We'll be waiting just a few more minutes. How's everybody? Okay, this guy Jeff is looking for a password, but there's no password. If you go on it through Facebook, right, it goes straight to this line, right, without a password.
Right.
Okay. Hey, Vic, if you have that in front of you, I'm going to give you this email. If you could send it.
Okay.
Here it is. Okay.
Did you send that to me? Or what did you do?
He's gonna get it to me like right now. Okay, you
Okay.
ready?
I'm ready. GMOSES as in boy at Gmail. Okay.
Okay. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to have you send it to one more person.
All right, friendo, ready?
There's
Let's
Tim.
go.
Okay.
You don't want to do that? Okay.
Okay, I'm getting it real quick. All right, while we're working out this last minute logistic and getting our moderator on.
There's nothing there. Leave it. There's no bunnies.
Okay, here it is, Vicky. It's
Leave it.
Gallegos, GALLEGOS, Chief, CHIEF, at yahoo.com.
Okay. I'll do it.
Thank you. All right, there he is. Hi, Jeff. Maureen, okay. Hey, while people are just
Good.
coming on here for just a few minutes,
Walk with me.
I'd like to just have everybody introduce themselves and just for a moment. So we're going to start with Mo to life.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Obar, but people here call me Mo. I live in Phoenix now. I know Jude and Jay from when I was living up in Breckenridge. So,
Yeah,
hello, everyone.
it's great to have you, man. Mike, it's great to have you. All right, Jay.
Hello.
I'm Jay Bonnell. I used to hang out at Confluence a lot more than I do now, but I'm the city liaison outreach for Highway Community Church in Broomfield, and that's where I'm doing most of my time these days. in Broomfield.
Oh, Vicky.
Hi, I'm Vicki Luce. I live in Highlands Ranch and serve with God's Grace Community Church. That's sort of located in Highlands Ranch when we have a location, but I serve in Whiz Kids as a tutor there on Confluence as well.
Vicky is a master of, does many things for a pastor from Douglas County. She's amazing. So it's good to have you on. Becky.
Hi, I'm Becky and Mike's over here. Say hi, Mike.
Hi.
And we're fans of Confluence.
I have to pay her to do that, so. All right, Brother Joe.
This is Uncle Joey D logging in from Los Angeles, actually right in Hollywood, the center of a lot of peaceful demonstrations yesterday. And I went in the middle of it once, and it was just, to hear the chants was invigorating.
Wow.
And I'm glad it was very peaceful. And to see that many people out was, and I'm also a huge fan of Confluence. In fact, I went on a Mexico trip with them years ago, and they're doing really the frontline essential works. And I call him St. Jude because that's what he is, and St. Cindy.
Thanks, Brother Joe. Okay. Pete Manconi.
Yeah, I'm Pete. I'm Jude's older brother.
Yeah, he's the mafia that takes care of us there. And your lovely wife.
Our lovely wife, Jeannie.
Hi,
Hi, Jean. Good to see you.
good
Yeah,
to see you, Jude.
Was on Confluence board for quite a few years.
Great. Jerry Stutzman. Maybe Jerry is on silent mode. She says, hi, everybody. No mic today. Ancient technology, probably. Okay. Hi, Jerry. Good to see you on the line. Okay, Tim.
Hey, I'm Tim Stedman. I'm never bored with Jude while being on the board. I would turn on video, but I'm out walking my dog at the moment. There you go. There's some video.
Nice brim.
He's having a good time. So I walk and listen to you guys and sweat at the same time, so it's not all bad. And I've been on the board at Confluence for something short of forever, and attend Faith Bible Chapel. And Jay, I like the Fu Manchu little goatee. That's pretty cool.
That's great. Awesome. Good to have you, Tim. All right, Chief, you're on the line?
I am. Can you hear me, Jude?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Good. Good. We can see you. And then Cliff Jones.
I'm Cliff Jones. I'm from Denver, Colorado. I've known Jude for about 20 years. And I am thankful to be alive today.
Yeah, you're going to be hearing more from Cliff today for sure. I got to tell you something about Cliff. Every time the word Cliff comes to my brain, I just have this immediate memory of this line that says, "Here's for Peru 2003." And he goes into this rap of this this CD we did in a song called Shackles. And he does a rap in the Shackles song that says, I'm breaking shackles like I'm breaking tackles. Is that clever or what? Do you remember the rest of that line, Cliff?
Of course not.
Okay, yeah. So there's the Breaking Shackles from the Breaking Tackles. And we just had Gary Armstrong come out. Gary, can you say hi? You're muted, Gary. Sign language?
It's always best to be muted.
There you are. That's great. And there's Chief. Chief, introduce yourself.
I said I finally figured out the video and obviously the mic at this point. So
Well, it's good to have you on, Chief.
yeah, it's good to see you as well.
Tell us what you do.
Sure. So, I mean, my day job is as a structural claims defect manager. And then I also do a lot of training. I do counterterrorism training, former law enforcement background, do a lot of security work. Am a firearms instructor. I mean, a jack of all trades, essentially.
And you know karate too, right?
I do. Yeah. We also do self-defense, but it's not karate. You're insistent on saying it's karate, but it's not karate. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's good. It's good to have you on.
Yeah, it's good to see you as well.
Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and you take it from here, and we'll talk. And this will be, I think, an enlightening and powerful conversation.
Okay, let's hope so. I'm Jeff Moses, and I'm just another Jude Del Hierro wannabe. That's another Jude fanboy, but I get to guide these conversations on occasionally, and it's a great thing to do. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. We are currently undergoing three. We are currently undergoing three very powerful forces that are pulling the country in different directions. There is, of course, the civil unrest that is sparked by the death of George Floyd at the hand of law enforcement officers. There is the socioeconomic catastrophe that is looming in result to the COVID lockdown. And then there is the public health crisis of the disease itself. And what we're going to try to do today is limit the conversation so that we don't get off into issues that will lead us into non-productive territory for the moment, because we want to focus today on stories of people who have experienced the COVID up close and personal. There are lots of stories out there. If you've paid any attention to the news media and all that, it was pretty much wall-to-wall coverage for about 6 weeks until events overtook the wall-to-wall coverage, and the wall-to-wall coverage became something else. But for a lot of us, we don't actually have any personal experience of either the disease itself for ourselves or for anyone who's close to us. And so the point of the conversation today, I believe, Jude, correct me if I'm wrong, is to give a personal perspective so that those who maybe don't have a more intimate experience of what's been going on with the COVID, a more personal experience, so that we can contextualize the various forces that are going on. As in everything else in this crazy time, there are different perspectives, and there are different groups of people trying to make things out of different perspectives. And so trying to come to something that is as reasonable as we can get and takes into account the experience of people whose experiences are not like our own, and then to try to contextualize all of that within the overarching question, which is what goes on in this incarnational leadership initiative, is what is the church's response? How do we, as followers of Christ, think about this issue in terms of the kingdom, not necessarily in terms of, public policy or any of those other things, but in terms of the kingdom first. So, is that a reasonable setup, Jude?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, all right. So we're going to have at least a couple people who are going to talk to us about their own experience. Is that correct, Jude?
That's correct. We have Cliff Jones and Chief Gallegos, and because probably Cliff's is a little more intense and probably a little bit more time, why don't we start with Chief?
Okay, very good. So Chief, sorry, we haven't met.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, that's cool.
I know at some point we will.
Yes, no doubt, no doubt. For those of us who are pulled into the Jude orbit, yes, we will no doubt collide at some point.
Exactly.
Tell us a little bit about what you do. You mentioned your self-defense training and things like that. Tell us a little bit about your life before COVID became a personal issue for you.
Sure. So I'm very active, and again, came in contact with Jude. Man, Jude, I can't even remember how many years ago it was, as a result of a desire to go back to, I grew up in that particular neighborhood. I actually was born and raised in the Sun Valley area, the Sun Valley Project area, but my grandmother lived right down the street, projects that are located right by Confluence. So we were there quite a bit, but anyway, that aside, as I indicated, I'm very active, do the self-defense training, instructor. I'm in my basement right now, and I just realized my elliptical is shown in the background. So I'm very, very active, try to stay in shape as much as possible. Overall, I thought I was in very, very good health, but so that's essentially who I was prior to COVID. Do you want me to go into the?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the ideas out there that is easily misunderstood is that COVID is particularly an issue for people who have, as we say, underlying conditions. People who are elderly, or people who have respiratory problems, or people who have diabetes, or people who are undergoing chemotherapy or whatever. And so in your particular case, your underlying condition was just glowing good health and absolute macho dominance.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually made light. I know that COVID is a serious thing, and our family had prepared adequately for it. We had the Lysol, the sanitizer. We still wear our mask. We were wearing our mask before. We were making sure that anyone that came into the house would immediately sanitize. So I wasn't downplaying the situation. Here's what I did underestimate is that if I ever was exposed to COVID, considering what my health conditions and whatnot, is that it would not be that big of a deal. I had saw stories that essentially said that folks were even asymptomatic at points, but so I knew that it wasn't necessarily a matter of if, but a matter of when. And my thought process is, well, it's not going to be that big of a deal for someone like myself because I stay in shape. I do a lot of cardio. Shouldn't be a big deal at all. Boy, was I wrong. So what this started off as is it started off as a result of my son being exposed to it, who lives with us. He's 20 years old. And we're not exactly sure whether or not the exposure came as a result of his contact with one of my nephews. Seeing as though the gym is closed, my son is very active as well. So he was going over to my nephew's house, and they were supposed to be exercising caution as well, and was working out at my nephew's house. So what ended up happening is one of the people that was living in that house, my sister-in-law's house, was exposed, and we believe that either that's where it started. And my son was exposed to it, brought it home to us, or his job in a bank potentially exposed to him as well. It may have been a combination of both.
Okay, now was he asymptomatic or did he have symptoms?
He was, yeah. So he came home and he was suffering from a cough. Now he suffers from allergies as well. So we assumed that it may be a cough that was related to the allergies because it wasn't severe. Nonetheless, the same evening that he started coughing, my wife noticed that he was flushed and, took his temperature, realized he had a temperature, a low-grade fever, decided that it would be, advisable to take him in, get him tested, went down to Children's Hospitals, tested him there. The results came back within 24 hours that he was positive. So at that point, we knew it was just a matter of time before everyone in the house, which consists of my son, as I mentioned, myself, my wife, and my mother-in-law, who's
so there were 4 of you, and all 4.
Yeah. So
all 4 of you ended up getting it.
Exactly. Yeah. So we end up all receiving it. Now the way that the situation works is the Department of Health. What happens is if you start exhibiting symptoms that are consistent with COVID-19, the automatic assumption is and I forget the term that they use, but essentially it's an assumed diagnosis, if you will. So long as you're starting to experience the cough, the chills, the body aches, all the above. So what happened is we started becoming symptomatic at different times. They quarantined us for at least 14 days. I'm talking about they being the health department, the Jefferson Health Department, who I really commend on a side note, because not only are they very responsive, but they educate you quite a bit when they call. They offered to also bring groceries to us at no price. Of course, we had to pay for the groceries, but they just really offered their services. So
this was all through Jefferson County.
It was, yeah. So going back to the actual process itself. So myself, my mother-in-law, and my wife started to demonstrate symptoms roughly around the same time. Now, in going back to my son, he only exhibited those maybe for about 3 days. Now we stayed quarantined, but all he really had was the cough, the low-grade fevers, or the low-grade fever. He had the body chills and the body aches maybe for about 2 days, but he was one of the luckier ones. My wife, my mother-in-law, on the other hand, who is she's over the age of 60, demonstrated symptoms: the cough, the fever, the body aches, the chills. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that they really, the fever, and the cough and stuff. And that was for about 5-7 days. I thought that I would probably kick it in about 3 days. Didn't happen. I progressively became worse, even after the 7-day period. If you look at the symptoms, anything that's on that list, you name it, I had it. Lost the sense of smell, lost the sense of taste, had the cough, the trouble breathing, the low-grade fever, the body aches for 14 days straight with the chills, which was grueling. And when I say chills, I'm not talking about flu-type chills or body aches. I literally was wearing 2 t-shirts, a sweatshirt, and 2 layers as far as pajamas and 2 pairs of socks on a daily basis. And you become real lethargic, so you want to lay around most of the time and that sort of thing. So 5 to 7 days, I thought, well, maybe day 8, day 9, I would get a little bit better. Around day 10, I started to feel a little bit better, so I thought maybe I was in the clear. Day 11 was much, much different. I started having trouble breathing. In fact, my mother-in-law is a medical assistant. She started determining my breathing rate, which was well above what it should have been for somebody my age and in my condition. Monday rolls around. I couldn't breathe at all. I started getting really, really dizzy. My mother-in-law, was trying to listen for my breaths. She indicated that she wasn't hearing a whole lot of oxygen going in. Same time, wasn't sure if there was pneumonia that had set in because didn't hear the common rattling, but encouraged me to go ahead and go to the urgent care. Actually, they wanted me to go to the ER, and I was dead set against going to the ER because didn't want to be admitted. So I went to the urgent care, spoke with the physician. She took my temperature again. I thought I was done with the low-grade fever. I was still running the temperature. Oxygen level for somebody my age and in my condition is typically a 98 to 99. It had dropped to 88 at that point, so I wasn't getting much oxygen. She decided as a precaution, she listened to my chest area, couldn't really hear the pneumonia, but decided to go ahead and do the chest x-ray as a precautionary measure. So they did that. She comes back in the room and she says, man, your lungs are horrible. And I start to laugh. I mean, we're all wearing masks. I thought she's joking there. And she goes, no, I'm really serious. Your lungs are very, very bad. And you have a very serious situation of pneumonia. So my response was, okay, what do I do in this scenario? And her response was, you know, they don't prescribe the hydroxychloroquine in the state. Not to mention that there's some data out there that shows, number one, it may not even be effective, and number two, it may be detrimental to your health. So the way that we ended the conversation, which was pretty frightening, was, hey, go home and, you know, continue to monitor this. And if you get in a situation where you're really having trouble breathing, don't even have a family member take you to the hospital because you probably won't make it. You have to call the ambulance at that point so that they can administer emergency care. And if you wake up and you're having some issues, don't go back to sleep. So it was pretty frightening. And I'm sitting there going, and this was around day 14, day 15. And I'm sitting there going, how does this happen? And what her explanation is that COVID-19, there was some data out there showing that people in my age bracket, I'm 47, male, also, as you can see, Hispanic, we're having more and more issues with that around that age range, and they really couldn't understand why. And in her mind, it was a situation where she couldn't explain it. So since that time, I've had some conversations with other folks that have had similar situations around my age group. Some have passed away, unfortunately, God rest their souls. Others have had similar situations. Some were admitted. Which I was dead set against, you know, trying to stay away from the ER and getting into the hospital situation. But I can tell you right now that I didn't underestimate the seriousness of COVID, but I thought I was going to kick its butt within a few days, and it literally, you know, beat me up. By the grace of God, like Cliff said, and he dealt with this as well. I'm happy to be alive. I don't take life for granted at this point. Health is one of the most important things, and I realize that much, much more. And, you know, I know that God has a different plan and kept me here for a reason. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more. So it was day 14 that it became kind of a near crisis.
Exactly.
How much longer was it until you felt like you were more or less back to normal?
So I'm still struggling a little bit. You know, it's wild as I was talking to my wife last night, and I was talking to her about the sense of taste and smell. I still don't have it completely back. As far as, you know, the doctor explained to me that, you know, when I asked her how long would it take for me to heal back up, her response was, it's going to take months before your lungs get back to normal. I'm back to exercising. I was back to exercising about 2 weeks after. That being said, though, typically I could go for 45 minutes of cardio with no big deal. I have to take rest after 10 minutes. So, you know, I'm getting back into the swing of things. I did an exercise routine with my wife yesterday, and at the end of it, it was only 25 minutes. I was winded and, you know, dizzy. So needless to say, I'm still experiencing some of the residuals of that. By the grace of God, I know that I'm in the mend area, but you know, it's exactly what they said, is that a lot of times you're still experiencing some of the symptoms and some of the residuals that come along with this, you know, horrible virus.
So is the prognosis that as far as your lung capacity goes, that you'll recover fully, or is there likely to be some long-term?
Yeah, I mean, they really don't know. That's the wild thing about this virus. There was really a lack of information. I mean, they can tell you whether or not you're positive and what the symptoms are, but we're not at the point yet where we know what it's going to look like in the long run, you know. And I'm one of those people that definitely tries to give back to the community. So I've done some research and, you know, on how to donate the antibodies and stuff. But yeah, they really don't know. Now, That being said, you know, and I think Jude probably saw it on Facebook, you know, I was educating people. People had a lot of questions regarding this situation. I can say right now that this, you know, having this, obviously with Cliff being there and myself being fortunate, two of the fortunate ones, it's not an automatic death sentence, but it's not to be taken lightly. There are some folks that can kick it in 3 days, obviously, like my wife and mother-in-law were able to do it in 5 to 7 days. My mother-in-law is you know, somewhat overweight and a little bit older. She was able to beat it, but for whatever reason, it took full advantage of me and it put me down for a little bit. But I got back up by the grace of God. Did we freeze up there?
Jeff, are you there?
Looks like his computer froze up there.
Yeah, Jeff is on pause for a minute. You know, yeah, so until he gets unfrozen, because Jeff is one of the frozen chosen. I'll take it from here. But yeah, Chief, thank you so much for your story. We definitely have some follow-up questions for you.
Sure.
Because again, I know that there were some things on Facebook that not only was it about, you helping to educate people, but also like, was there a negative side? But I want you to think about that of Facebook posts that you saw that you're like, like you felt you needed to respond, or it might have caused some frustration from that.
So,
but we're gonna hold that for a minute. And again, thank you everybody for for that, for your story. It's I think we're all learning from this that it's this COVID is no respecter of persons. So
exactly.
And while as I'm waiting for Jeff,
I'm right here.
There you are. Yeah, we lost you, Jeff.
It completely cut out on me. I have no idea why. Yeah, I was trying to ask Chief if you had a more severe reaction than any of the other people in your household, and as far as you know, there's no way of understanding why.
No. And again, the medical physicians and really had no answers for it. Again, it's a situation where they really don't know what they don't know. And it's just, it's a hard to understand virus, and even the symptoms are much, much different per person. So that's all I can really say is that no idea why, but just glad that, I was able to overcome it.
Right. Now, Jude touched on something a second ago that I just wanted to talk about, which is the reaction that this brought about in other people toward you, and how that reaction, how you dealt with that.
Sure. So for the most part, the reaction was very, very positive. We had a lot of folks that were praying for us. I'm trying to think what the first post. I think it was a situation where I had posted pictures of my lungs, the X-rays.
Yeah.
Normal lungs should look like, so that people can understand the seriousness of it. But one of the things I really emphasize is what I emphasized on this call is it's not an automatic death sentence. Each person deals with it differently. It attacks the body in different ways, but it should not be taken lightly. So for the most part, the response was positive. I can tell you right now that, I am a little frustrated by some of the posts that I see out there that are making light of the situation, because it's not to be making light, something to be making or taken lightly. So that was one of my frustrations. I also became, and again, I don't want this to be a political conversation as well, was a little frustrated with the current administration's response to it as well, by essentially downplaying some of it, and talking about the medication, the hydroxychloroquine, as if it was something to be used whenever. and kind of not really presenting it in an educational fashion. Now, the administration that currently is in place, we private doctors. But in our scenario, in my particular scenario, I did speak with the physician. Number one, she said it's not available for prescription by the medical practitioners in Colorado. I don't know if that's changed. But number two, there were some very, the jury was out still, and they actually thought that it might cause more harm than good. So I was a little frustrated, and I did post regarding that when that statement had came out that, hey, this may not, number one, it's not even available. Number two, it's something that may be classified as dangerous. And I don't think that was really communicated as it should have. When all of us became asymptomatic, we got to the point where nobody was running a fever. Thanked everybody for their ongoing prayers, things of that nature. So for the most part, to answer your question, it was positive. I did realize that there were some folks that were, who I still classify as friends, who are totally opposed to wearing the mask or, any of those things. Still think that it's a major hoax that's created by the government, or I'm sorry, by sectors of the government as well as the media. And I can tell you right now, it's not. And that was my whole thing, is not trying to spread fear, just trying to raise awareness. You don't want this stuff. And if you do get it, or you start becoming symptomatic, go get tested. There's nothing wrong with going to get tested. And if you do find yourself on the unfortunate end of actually contracting it, make sure you seek the medical attention as soon as possible that you need. I consider myself a very stubborn person. Everybody in my household would believe that. And I think that a lot of the seriousness of the pneumonia episode would have been much less had I actually went in sooner when it was recommended. So hopefully that addressed your inquiry there.
Yeah. So yeah, that's good. A couple more things. First, in terms of what actually happened with your lungs, it was pneumonia related and exacerbated by the COVID-19.
Exactly, and that's exactly the way it was phrased on my medical documents. COVID-19 was the primary diagnosis, and pneumonia was a secondary as a result of COVID-19.
So what that caused was for your lungs to fill with fluid? Is that?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So it not only filled with fluid, but and I wish I could display the X-rays here, but it causes the entire lungs to become cloudy. So it's not only on the bottom of the lungs. You can see that there was a huge fluid area, but also throughout the entire lung area, it attaches and it becomes real cloudy there.
Okay. Wow. So when it came to getting testing and treatment and that sort of thing, did you have any problems with access, or were you able to get what you needed?
Yeah. So what they determined is that it was assumed diagnosis. And when I say they, I'm talking about the Jeffco Health Department again. They said, if you're symptomatic, the assumption is you got it. If you're living in the household where somebody has tested positive. As far as, so the testing, we were assumed to be positive. Now, when I went into the urgent care, it was absolutely confirmed. So as far as the testing goes, I don't think that that's an issue. Again, my son was able to get tested the day that my wife took him in. We've had other family members. My older son actually contracted it as well. He actually was diagnosed over at Swedish Hospital. One of the things, though, that kind of frustrates me is that there's a disparity as far as the time frame in terms of returning those results. I think that that's one of the biggest challenges that our society or community is facing. Sometimes they can get it back in 24 hours. Other times it takes a week,
I wonder what that is. Do you have any idea?
I have no idea. Now, I know that each of those folks went to different facilities. They had different time frames as far as the results being returned. But I mean, it's really, really frustrating. Now, as far as the medical treatment, I didn't have a issue with obtaining medical treatment, but I can tell you right now that if there's any sort of idea of how the lepers in Jesus's time felt. That's the way they treat you. I mean, you have to sit in your car. When you go to urgent care, they take all the information over the phone, and then they call you back and they say, hey, we're going to go ahead and bring you in, and they rush you right back to a room where you're quarantined. Everybody is fully masked, masked up and stuff like that, which rightly so. But I mean, it's almost like, you're treated in a fashion where it's like, you just feel, it's just a negative situation. But on the flip side, I get it. I understand why they do it. They don't want it.
So do you think that the severity of the reaction in that situation contributed to your hesitance to to be
It
admitted?
absolutely did. That's funny that you say that, because that was my biggest objection, even on the day of, is, hey, I don't want to be treated like, I have this deadly disease. And ultimately, I guess it falls into that category. Yeah, that was one of the major contributing factors, that sense of pride of not wanting to be treated in a certain fashion. Yeah, I think it did. It absolutely did.
I don't want to be treated like a guy with a deadly disease. Sir, you have a deadly disease.
Exactly. Yeah. But I didn't want to believe that at the time. I'm still convinced that, hey, it's just any day now that I kick this thing's butt,
Right. You've gone 12 rounds with the champ. If you could make it a 20-round fight, you'd win for sure.
It was a 12-round fight. I can tell you right now, when I was expecting maybe a 3-rounder,
Yeah, TKO in the third.
Yeah.
That's what you've always done before, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Jude, do we want to take questions, or do we want to move on to Cliff's story?
Yeah, I think we want to move on to Cliff's story, and then we'll take the questions at the end.
Okay. Cliff, it's great to see you, man. Oh, you're muted.
Good to be seen.
Yeah, haven't seen you in a long time.
I know. I don't even remember how many years.
It's been a while.
It's good to be a part. Unlike Chief's, my story was a little bit more horrible than that. Prior to the COVID, I've been working at the post office for the past 24 years. I've been a supervisor for the past 5 years. And I've just been, working, reading my word, trying to get closer to God. And one Sunday, I went to work, and when work was over, I came home and went to bed that night. And all of a sudden, I had chills. My body was hurting. I couldn't explain why. All of a sudden, it just happened. So the next day, that Monday, I woke up and I called my doctor. I told her I had like flu-like symptoms. And she was like, okay, well, let's give me a call on Thursday and we'll kind of see, what's changed. So on Tuesday, I was feeling a little worse, and I called the ambulance, and they came out to my home, and they really didn't do anything and decided that, I was fine. So Wednesday comes along, and I'm feeling worse. And it hit me how I was feeling. I was feeling the same way I felt when I had sepsis back in 2014. And my wife, she was really concerned. She said, seriously? Yeah, it's the same thing. I have everything except I'm not sweating. So I called the ambulance again. They immediately looked at me, took some vitals, and decided they were going to take me to the hospital. So this is March 31st. I go to the hospital. They do a test. And from the moment they did the test, I pretty much don't remember anything else. I remember them coming back and telling me that I was tested positive for COVID. And at that point, my mind just blanked. But apparently, I had called my wife and told her what they had told me. And they told me that if I didn't allow them to put me on a ventilator that night, that I probably wouldn't make it through the night. And so I ended up going on the ventilator. And I actually was on the ventilator for the next 25 days. But in the meantime, on the first, while I was put on the ventilator, my mother-in-law and my wife were admitted to the hospital for the COVID. And my mother-in-law lasted 3 days before she passed. And she was 85 years old. And I felt bad because I was out of it. I had no idea what was going on. My wife was in the hospital for about a week and she came home. But before she came home, 3 days after that, my son ended up in the hospital and he's diagnosed with COVID. He ended up being in the hospital for about a week and he came home and both of them started healing, rather quickly. And so while I'm in this this ventilator, I have no idea of time. But when I look back, I remember one instance where I really believed I was awake and I saw the nurses and I saw the doctors and I heard them talking to me, telling me what they're going to do and what's going to happen. But when I tried to communicate with them, they had no idea I was trying to communicate. Apparently, because the thing's in my throat and I can't do nothing. So I had to tell myself to go back to sleep. And I went back to sleep. And on the 26th, I remember them telling me they're taking me out of ICU, that I was doing very good. I was a fighter. And I was just out of it. The next day, they were trying to get me to do physical therapy stuff, trying to get me to stand up. And all I can remember is complaining that I can't do it. I don't want to do it. I just want to sleep. And then on the 28th of April, I woke up. My mind was clear. Everything was just like nothing ever happened, except I'm laying in a bed and I can't move. I can't roll over to my left or right. I can't sit up. I'm an invalid. And I was just really, really like caught off guard. And then during that time, I talked to my wife and I find out that my mother-in-law had passed. And then I really felt bad because I couldn't be there for my wife, just pretty much ignoring my own situation. Well, as the week goes by, I start feeling a little better. But the first 3 days, I was really upset. I was really frustrated. I forgot about God and what he was doing. And I had to get to a point where that I knew God was involved and everything was going to be all right. But it was a scary situation because we take for granted being able to get up and walk. We take for granted being able to bend over and pick up something off the floor. And here I am, a guy who's been physical his whole life. And all of a sudden, I can't do anything. When I go to eat, my hands are shaking. When I pick up my phone, my hands are shaking. It was just a horrible experience. And it took me about 4 days to make peace with myself and understand that God had me. And I had to recognize that I was a miracle. Even though I couldn't do anything, even though I didn't see any light ahead, everybody's telling me I'm progressing, I'm doing really good. And it was just crazy. So the week goes by and I start physical therapy and I'm starting to feel good. I'm not really into it because it's a lot harder. And then about 3 days after that, my daughter ends up in the hospital and they say she has COVID. And she's in the same hospital with me. And that really kind of changed everything for me. It caused me to get motivated because one, now my daughter's here. My wife's at home dealing with all this by herself. And I really felt I really needed to be there. So I got motivated and started doing physical therapy. And I had a chance to talk to my daughter. And my daughter, let me explain, my daughter was handicapped. She had sickle cell. She was paralyzed on the left side of her body. She had numerous issues with her liver and with her kidneys. And so this was really tough on her. But, and she's like, when you talk to her, she's like talking to a 12-year-old. So the situation was very sensitive. So I'm talking to her on the phone and she just starts crying. And I start telling her it's going to be all right. And that the both of us were going to walk out of the hospital together. And I really believe that. So I'm starting to do whatever they tell me. I'm starting physical therapy. they said, we could do it twice a day if you want. And I was like, yes, let's do it twice a day. And I'm working and I'm working. And all of a sudden, on Friday the 15th, I get a call from my wife saying that they just called her and told us that our daughter has maybe 3-4 hours to live. And that just crushed me. That was really hard. And so I had the opportunity to go see her, and came into the room and told her, said, Winsy, it's Papa Bear. She acknowledged me. My wife came in, said, honey, it's Mama. And she acknowledged her, and then she closed her eyes and she never focused again. And about 2.5 hours later, she had passed. That was really devastating because, one, I couldn't be there for my wife, and two, just losing a child. Okay. And so afterwards, I got even more motivated, and I knew for sure that God had something for me to do. There was more for me to do than what I had been doing. And not that what I had been doing hasn't been enough, but there's more for me to do. So I had to really acknowledge that I was a miracle, and the fact of what everybody was telling me, that I've come a long way, and they are surprised that I'm, healing as fast as I was. Of course, while they're saying that, it's like day 45 and I'm still in the hospital, and I can't see why I'm still there and if I'm doing so great. But I found out they did the test again. I was COVID free. Then they did another test just to make sure I was COVID free. And I'm supposed to go to rehab, and they tell me, well, you have a blood infection. So now I have to stay in a hospital to get antibiotics through an IV because they have none by the pill for what I had. So I ended up staying in a hospital until the 25th of May. I was in there a total of 55 days. I was never so happy to get home than I was that day. But the funny thing about it was, when I was doing physical therapy in the hospital, that was pretty easy. When I got home, that was a whole nother ball game, because now I'm walking around and I'm doing daily stuff. And that's been a struggle for me. And I'm still in that struggle. I've been out of the hospital now maybe 11 days. My walking is getting better, but I still have no balance. Out of all this, one of the things that I laugh about is when I went in, I was a diabetic. At this point, I'm not a diabetic. The COVID took about 50 pounds off me, just chewed away my muscles. And but at the same time, it took the diabetes away from me. Over the past 2 weeks, I haven't taken any insulin, no diabetic medicine, and my blood sugars they've been fantastic. And I'm always trying to look for the bright side of things. So that was the one thing that I took out. That was the one thing I took out that really, that gave me some light. But now I'm home. I'm trying to get stronger. I still struggle with balance, but I am with my family. I am getting better. I do find comfort in the word. I do find comfort in knowing that the Most High has truly, truly blessed me, because I look at where I was and where I come from. And most of the stuff at the beginning, I had to be told what happened. Everything that happened afterwards, once I awoke, I had to learn to deal with the frustration and learn to deal with, this is what I have to go through. Sometimes you just have to deal with what you have to deal with. And yeah, I lost a couple of family members, but I had to recognize that God has his timing for everything. So when it happened, it was rough. Now I have a little bit more understanding. I have a little bit more peace. It is a little bit more quiet in my house, and I miss the noise, but I'm thankful to be alive, and I'm thankful for just being brought through, being able to survive what I went through. because a lot of people have died from this disease, and a lot of people don't take this disease very seriously. And I've seen so much stuff on Facebook where people don't want to wear a mask, saying they're born in a free country, just really, really just not understanding. But when you lose your senses and you lose your ability to walk or to be physical, that kind of tends to make you understand that everything isn't always what you see. And so I'm very thankful for where I'm at now. And God is good.
Wow. Forgive me, I've been having connection problems here. And Cliff, I was cutting in and out. And if you already covered something that I want to ask about, then please forgive me for missing things.
Oh, that's okay.
So for both of you guys, Cliff, for you and for Chief, and let me ask this question first, because one of the let me ask this question to you first, Cliff, because one of the things that we have seen is that statistically speaking, the impact of the COVID-19 virus pandemic has been disparate. It has had a disparate impact on minority communities. And for you as an African American man, for Chief as a Hispanic man, do you guys have any kind of insight about this and about what that might be?
None at all. I mean, since I've been home, I've been told that it's happened a lot amongst my community, but I really don't understand, why, what's actually happened that's causing that. I just know that I had an underlying condition. I was a diabetic, so I recognize if I get it, it'll probably be a little bit more tough for me. I just didn't realize it would be that tough.
Yeah. Okay. And did you feel at all? You've talked a little bit about the impact of people treating this in a cavalier way, people having reactions that minimize the severity of it. Did you feel in any way that the impact there of people's reaction might be in some way disproportionate to you in terms of being a member of a minority community?
I guess I never really thought about it. I've been so focused on trying to get healthy, and as I hear stuff, I take in the information, but I really haven't thought about it.
Okay.
I've just been pretty much thankful for the people that weren't afraid and helped me, helped my family. So I've just been thankful for that.
Wow. Yeah. Well, and you know what? I think thankfulness is the key to a lot of things. Yeah. So, Chief, and do you have any insight in this, the idea of the disparate impact in minority communities?
I'm not sure exactly. I mean, the common thought process is a lack of adequate healthcare. You know what? Can I put you on hold here? I think we have somebody at the door. The dog's barking up. Start. Give me a second here.
All right. If it's Uber Eats, make sure you tip them.
Hey, I think there's another factor. I think it'd be good just to maybe show of hands. Does anybody else know anyone who actually experienced the COVID personally? Can you raise your hand?
Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, some of the thought process behind that is inadequate health care.
Right.
I have great health care. It sounds like Cliff does as well. Cliff, let me also express my sincerest condolences as well for your mother-in-law, as well as for your daughter. I couldn't imagine what you're going through and what you're continuing to go through. So my sincerest condolences on that. But, I've heard that, but I don't know if it has to do with genetic makeup. Honestly, the physicians are at a loss.
Right.
And they really can't answer a whole lot of questions. I'm sure that Cliff had a lot of questions for his physicians that they really couldn't. And they're not sure, why it hits certain age brackets, certain ethnicities more. They've talked about the fact that maybe some folks are born with a better immune system to a particular virus. I'm one of those people that wasn't getting sick throughout the entire year, although there were others that were getting colds and things like that. He's nodding his head. I mean, it's like, you really can't put your finger on why things are happening the way that they are.
And this to me, I think is, and I really appreciate both you guys in your honesty, your forthrightness here, because I think throughout this, all of the stuff we're dealing with now, there are so many things that we don't really know, but people feel like they need to make statements about them, even though they don't know. And so I think that being able to look at it and just acknowledge that there's stuff going on here that we just don't know. We have the humility to be able to say, I don't know. Yeah.
One of the items that I want to hitchhike on is, what Cliff was talking about. Of course, his situation was a lot more serious. His loss of family members was a lot more serious as well. What's wild about this, and you can chime in here, Cliff, is that the fact that you don't feel like you're going to get better puts you in a severe depression. It puts you in a severe depression. When I had came back from urgent care and I was having conversations with my wife and my mother-in-law, I was already making plans that I may not be around. I have a business to run, so I started thinking about all the loose ends that I needed to tie up before, so that my wife could potentially be in a situation to take it over. I have some business partner that I was going to reach out to. And very similar to Cliff, it was one, at some point in a conversation with God where I was sitting there going, I'm not giving up yet. Since when are you ever a quitter? And I think just having that conversation, whether it was divine advice or just on my end, where, hey, we still have things to do, and you need to get up and you need to start getting moving. As Cliff was indicating, and this was one of the things that the physicians explained as well, is that this, and whether you like him or not, Chris Como, who had the virus as well, has talked about this. This virus wants you to sit still and to lay down. That's one of the reasons why you become so tired, because it wants to infiltrate those breathing systems and the lungs, etc. And like Cliff's, you do not want to get up. My wife wanted to go for a walk one day around the block. This was before I was diagnosed with pneumonia. My response was, I don't think I can make it. And since when do I ever say that I don't want to go for a walk or whatever? But I was, and when we got down to the stop sign, it was kind of like, hey, let's just turn around because my lungs are burning and I can't catch my breath. But very similar to Cliff, it puts you down.
Yeah. The funny thing was for me, when I first got to the hospital, my mindset was completely different. When they first talked to me, they said, do you want us to use a ventilator if we have to? And I was telling them no. I said, no, don't do any resuscitation or anything. I had a really, at that point when I first got there, I was ready to go. I was ready to just give up. And I was thinking to myself, if I don't fight this and I die now, then my wife can get the insurance money. And I'm thinking, I don't put all this money into paying for this insurance. I said, I'd like to be able to use it. So I was in a mindset where I really didn't care. Then after they told me what was going on, I still felt the same way. But then when I talked to my wife, everything changed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think. I'm sorry, Cliff. Did I step on you there?
I just said, instead of just giving up after talking to her, things became more solid for me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that whole business about, the virus wanting you to give up is a really powerful picture of disease here. and the chief, I think you mentioned the idea of realizing, coming to the realization that God has something still for you. So it becomes a faith issue. It becomes an issue where we as individuals might say, you know what, it'd be better just to give up. And you know, you sit there and think, well, I'm a fighter, I need to fight. Well, I don't feel like fighting. Well, you know what, maybe you need to trust God and just let him do what he's going to do anyway.
Amen.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that statement. It's one of those, you know, and there's been some studies, you know, since that time, and Cliff has probably looked at a lot of stuff as well, because you're sitting there trying to figure out what the heck happened. You know, how did I get T-boned by this particular virus, and why was it so horrible? So, you know, in looking at some of the recent studies, there's some opinions out there, and I think there's some medical data that would back this, is that it does also attack the brain, the mental system as well.
Yes.
Why they've concluded that is because the sense of taste and smell are associated with brain function. So there is, at some point, it has to attack the brain system or the nervous system in such a way that you lose those senses. And they also believe that as a result, going back to what Cliff was talking about, you know, I was sitting there thinking about things that I never think about, you know, about giving up. Well, hey, maybe it's just easier to go, you know, I mean, because I'm tired of being in this pain. And Cliff, you know, his story is way more, detrimental than mine was. But you just get to that point where, hey, I'm kind of done at this point. I don't want to continue in this sort of pain and whatnot. And then, as you indicated, you know, at some point you go, no, this is a faith issue, and God's going to get me through it. And until he says otherwise, I'm not going home yet.
Yeah. And I think just from a theological point of view, you know, trusting God is not always in our head, right?
No.
It's not always a matter of our brains. There's got to be something else, something on a spiritual plane that responds beyond our brains, beyond our bodies. And I think maybe for both of you guys, you know, there was a point at which you rallied from a faith point of view. Would you say that's true, Cliff?
Oh, yes, most definitely. If it wasn't for my faith, I wouldn't have made it through. I had to recognize who God was and that he was there, and he's been there all the time. Had I not rallied back to that, knowing that, you know, I probably wouldn't be here.
Cool. Yeah. Chief, you on that same?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at some point you have that heart to heart with God, and you know, you just realize that ultimately it's up to the man upstairs as far as when you go and how you go, and until that situation, you know, until he makes that determination, my responsibility here is to fight.
Yeah. Cool.
You know, one of the things that Chief said, people really don't understand, and that's the brain issue. A lot of people do suffer from this. In my own case, when I was on a ventilator, they told me that I had blood in my brain, that I had like a small stroke. Now, I was fortunate because when I came out of it and they did all the tests, I was able to score high. I had no deficiencies. But I did find out that there are a lot of people who actually go in and they'll have a stroke and die from the stroke, you know, or they'll come out of it and they'll have problems with one side of their body. So that's one thing that's really not talked about when you hear them talk about it on TV. They always talk about the lungs and, you know, people having a hard time coming back, but they don't talk about what happens to your brain.
Jude, I think we lost him again.
Okay.
Okay. I'm here.
There you are. Okay, there.
Yeah, I keep cutting in and out. I have no idea why. Sorry about that. Jude, are we ready to maybe take some questions?
Yeah, I think that's a good direction. I think why don't we throw it out there, and just we'd love to hear you if you have any questions to Cliff or
yeah. Let's first clear it with Cliff and Chief. Are you guys okay with answering questions from people?
Well, I'm good.
Yeah, absolutely. And somebody had just typed in a request for the pictures of my X-rays. You know, it may be something that I have to send over to Jude after the fact. I don't know if I have the ability to get that up and running right now.
Yeah, send it over to me.
Okay.
And we'll copy like everybody here, because that I remember seeing that on Facebook, and it was it just grips you for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And those are the only kind of pictures of body parts that we want. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Very, very good. All right. Does anybody have anything they would like to pose to these two gentlemen about their experience? Go ahead, raise your hand.
I think Jude had asked about PTSD, and I'll let Cliff address that first.
Wow. That's a good one. I guess when I first got home, I had some issues because everything was different. Not just my family life was different, but just being back home and being as weak as I was, and not really totally accepting everything when I first got home, because it was so different. Like when I was doing physical therapy in the hospital, it was great. I did my work, I went back to the bed, I laid down, I rest. But when I came home, there was nobody pushing me. So first couple of days, I kind of sat around, didn't really do anything, didn't really do any exercises. And so it took me about 3 days to get over myself and to begin doing what I need to do so I can go forward, hopefully go back to work, But the first 3 days, I guess I experienced some of that stuff, just not being sure, and the changes from everything that's happened. You leave the house and there's 5 people in the house, and then you come home and then there's only 3. It's just like, it's just, sometimes it's just mind blowing. You can't write this stuff.
No.
Sometimes it just took me about 3 days to really being home and recognizing, okay, things are different. You're different. You got to do things different. It's okay. So.
Wow. There's a resilience in there that's really, truly remarkable, Cliff. And the kind of changes that that we face are just so difficult to find a way to meet change on that level. That's wild. Yeah. So how about you, Chief?
Yeah, actually, so being totally transparent, I actually do see a counselor for some PTSD issues that are unrelated to COVID. So that's an ongoing thing that I do. But so during the whole COVID episode, I did have an appointment, and we were doing the TeleView conference calls. I didn't have the energy. I didn't even have the energy to talk for a full hour, and I wouldn't take very many phone calls during that time from folks that were concerned and were trying to give me a call, because I didn't have the energy. I literally did not have the energy just to even talk. So I'd either respond back via text, or my wife would respond back on my behalf. But one of the things I did do is I had reached out to my counselor during that time, and I said, hey, I'm going to have to miss this evening's appointment for this reason. But and her response was, hey, let's just have a 15-minute talk if you're up to having the 15-minute talk. So having discussed it with her, and going back to that age bracket and folks that shouldn't be dealing with the major issues, she explained to me that a friend of hers around the same age, similar situation, kept themselves active, had came down with it. He was on his day 21. And her whole feedback was, look, this is going to continue. You're going to continue to get depressed. You're going to sit there and go, man, am I ever going to get any better? You are. Here's the things that I would recommend. Get out, get some sun, do the vitamin D, take take the vitamins and that sort of thing, do the things that that she absolutely loved to do, and things of that nature. But she did explain to me this is going to continue much longer. Like Cliff was saying, you know, I didn't lose family members. I feel horrible that he did. But I can tell you right now that there's a little bit of a fear level that was, I mean, again, understanding that it was serious before, but there's there's almost a fear now. And I have to go to God and give that to him, where I don't want others to ever go through with what I went through. And that was one of the reasons why I would reach out on Facebook and again, just try to spark awareness. Again, not fear, but just saying, hey, you do want to consider this to be something that is, you know, a formidable opponent. And but to answer your question, yes, they have told me that those will continue. That that's a normal healing process. Is that you're going to become even more fearful of the virus to begin with, because you don't want others to go through the similar or the situation that you went through.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So are there any questions out there? Anybody want to ask a question?
I'll ask one if no one else. Mo, do you have one? Anyone else have one question first?
I think Mo had one.
Okay, Mo, and then Becky.
Okay. First of all, Cliff, condolences.
Thank you.
Sorry to hear your mother-in-law and your daughter. And my question is what would you have to say to all these people that are just waiting for everything to go back to normal? Yeah, I feel like
I tell them they're crazy. There is no going back to normal. You know, what's happening now, it's just, the world is changing again. So there is not going to be going back to normal. Just like we can't go back to the 1950s, we're not going to go back to the 90s or the early 2000s. This pandemic has pretty much changed everything, and we have to change with it. And while we're changing, we have to learn to be able to maintain the relationships. Even though they can't be as physical as they once were, we still have to work on maintaining the relationships. But there is no going back.
Okay.
I would definitely echo those sentiments, Mo, what Cliff had just said. You know, the way that I describe it is, you know, there is no normal as it relates to the past. There's a new normal at this point, and the world has changed, and it's unfortunate that with the racial tensions that are going on, and you know, horrible situation all the way around. Being an ex-law enforcement, I mean, I will sit there and be the first to sit there and go, that situation was completely out of line. It should have never have happened, and that sort of thing. But I almost think that it's eclipsed the COVID epidemic or pandemic, and as a result has taken some of the attention away. And I'm believe me, I think they're both just as serious. But you know, I cringe. I don't know if Cliff does this. I cringe when I walk into a store and I see folks without a mask.
Oh.
And I cringe when I see the protesters, and I support what they're doing out there by trying to make change. But you know, those that don't have the mask on, I'm just sitting, you know, you know, there's some statistics out there that now 1 in 300 have potentially been exposed, and it's just a matter of time before, you know, the pandemic increases, and the cases that have been diagnosed are just going to skyrocket as a result of these close quarters. Hopefully being outside has helped with some of that. But I know that Cliff probably cringes. I even cringe more when I see that parent out there who doesn't have a mask on and then has a child in there that doesn't have the mask on. And I want to say something because they have no idea. And I think Cliff can
right.
This. Right now I am wearing the mask to protect them. I'm not necessarily worried about contracting this again.
Right.
I have no idea. And I feel like sitting there saying, you really didn't understand the fact that somebody like me could have been standing right next to you when I was potentially symptomatic and could have exposed you, you know? And I think that that's where some of my frustration lies, is just watching, not necessarily people, I get it. I don't want to live in fear. I want to be, I want to live in a free country where I don't have to do certain things that I'm not required to do. It drives me nuts when I've seen all those posts about folks that were fired up about trying to go into a store and they were required to wear a mask. And, and I'm sitting there going, and then they would post something like, this is a free country. And I'm like, absolutely, it's a free country. But
Go in the
that's a
store.
private institution. And you have the freedom when they tell you you cannot come in to go elsewhere where maybe they are going to allow you not to wear a mask. As I indicated, my background is, I do firearms training. I carry concealed. And at any given time, if I walk into a private institution and they tell me that I cannot do it in there, I have to leave. And I understand that, exercising my freedom to bear arms. But at the same time, I also understand I am in a private business who can ask me to leave. And if I choose not to do so, I am violating their rights and can be charged with trespassing. So I think there's a misconception regarding everything's a right in this country.
Well, yeah.
Which really bugs me. And I don't know about Cliff if that bugs him.
It's a trip. It's a trip. And like you said, sometimes I want to say something, and it's kind of difficult to say something. But apparently somewhere along the line, I'm probably going to have to say something, and they can get mad. But, it really is about the safety for all of us. It's, wearing a mask is protecting you. And people, when they're not wearing a mask, is basically they're telling me that they don't even care about themselves, because that's what the mask is for. Is to protect you.
I just want to just piggyback up just for a second on what you guys were saying there, because I think what you were saying about the pandemic and how it's being taken out of the headlines these days and people just are itching to get back to normal is going to be true of these other two big things that are impacting on us right now. And so we're living in a time, as Cliff suggested, where change is very rapid and there are things that may be crumbling. And so that brings me at least back to the enduring theme of this series of talks, which is, where's the church in all this? How do we respond with a message that is consistent and is not simply a reaction to whatever is in today's news cycle?
Cliff, I'll let you fill that. If you're asking us, are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cliff,
I'll let you fill that first.
I'm asking anybody. Yeah.
Okay.
I believe that the church just simply needs to honor the word of God more. The more that we honor the word of God, we become the light. That's how we become the light to the world. We just have to honor what the Bible's telling us.
Amen.
We have to love people, but loving people isn't always telling them what they want to hear. Loving people is saying something. Look, you really should wear a mask. It's for the protection of you. It doesn't hurt for us to remind people where we're living at. So I really think that as a church, we need to get more in the word of God. So when we're out there, we can speak as Christ would have spoken. Christ spoke in love, but he didn't mince words either. And we need to be able to do that and be able to be an example. When we go in the stores, we need to make sure that we have our masks on. We need to make sure that we take care of our health like we should. Use hand sanitizer and wash your hands when you finish with the bath. I mean, we need to do all that stuff so other people can see we're doing it. We can be that light. But we just we got to really stick with the word of God. If we don't, everything is just going to keep spiraling.
Right. That's good. Chief, you got anything to add?
Yeah. Actually, I'll add a little bit. I'm going to hitchhike right off of Cliff's thoughts there about the word. Jude and I were having a conversation when we talked about my attending this meeting, and we were talking about one of the most kindest, or the most easiest demonstration is to show care and love for your neighbor. And what better way to do that, like Cliff said, than not only putting on some sort of equipment, PPE, that not only protects me, but also protects my neighbor as well. So, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And that's right on the head. Hey, I'm taking care of myself and I'm taking care of you, at that point. As far as the church's role, I think that having the situation has not only increased my faith and my understanding that God has a purpose for me here still, which I'm thankful for, but also understanding that people truly do care. I saw a lot of folks who I considered as friends, some just as acquaintances, who were sending me messages, and saying, hey, if you need anything, let me know. I'll go grab you groceries. I mean, we can do whatever is necessary. So the outpouring of love was huge. And Jude and I had talked a little bit about, when the announcement was made that they were going to open up churches and that it was a requirement in state. I don't think that was ever necessarily in question. In fact, June and I talked a little bit about this. Some of the major churches that I have exposure to have talked about the fact that they have seen more of an increase as far as people's faith as a result of this, because now they're tuning in and they're tallying up by laptops or screen, if you will. But that can mean that 3 or 4 people are sitting in there, so the numbers are a little skewed, and it can be a lot more. But the church is actually touching more people now than it was when we were attending church in a building. Now, where I'm going with that is I think that ultimately they should be opened up, but I think that they need to be opened up in a very responsible way, in a situation where people are protected, because, as pastors, the ultimate goal is to protect your flock. And that's not just spiritually. That also has to be done in a physical type way, as well, to protect their flocks physically. So that's what I believe is the church's role. And I can tell you right now that as I hear others that are coming down with the COVID, I'm going to back up a little bit. So my son was actually very similar to Cliff. So he calls me one day and he told me that he was having trouble breathing, and he knew that I had already went through. In fact, I was still symptomatic at the time. He calls the ambulance, and I said, you're going to have to call the ambulance because I can't leave the house. Not to mention, if you don't have COVID, you will have it by the time you're in the car with me. So he calls the ambulance, and they start doing the vitals, and they say he's totally fine. He goes to the ER. They end up releasing him. They do the EKG, monitor his oxygen levels. I'm talking to him on the phone during that time. They end up releasing him. 3 days later, he's diagnosed with COVID. He did have it. So it's one of those things where, it's a scenario where, as the church, we need to make sure that we're ministering to others, that we're educating them, and that we're just being compassionate towards those that are still dealing with it. In addition to those that have a really extensive fear of this as well, we need to put we need to walk in their shoes as well.
So in some ways, you can see all of this as an invitation toward taking our faith a little more seriously.
Absolutely.
Who could possibly benefit from that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know how Cliff feels about this, but I kind of feel like it's my duty at this point, that's why God is me on this earth, to educate others.
Yes, exactly.
Cool.
The whole COVID experience, it is a mind changer.
Yeah.
Because it's something that COVID is different for everybody. Everybody's affected differently. Everybody doesn't have the same symptoms, but the result ends up being the same. The COVID changes you, especially if you get pretty serious with it. It actually changes your mindset. You recognize that this is just flesh, and this flesh is not going to last. So while you're here, you got to do what you got to do. And if God's calling you to do something, well,
make it count.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. Becky, you've been waiting for a long time. You got a question? You're on mute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to thank you, Cliff and Chief, for sharing your stories. It's been incredible, and it has really touched me in the heart. And thank God you're here. And I wanted to know, Cliff, on you, are you COVID free now?
Yes, I am. I'm COVID free and infection free.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well,
Yes.
so are you, how are you dealing with this now? I know, Chief, you went into this a little bit, but Cliff, are you just staying home right now? Is this while you're recovering?
Well, pretty much. I take my daily walks like I'm supposed to, and I'm doing exercises that I'm supposed to be doing. I haven't really started driving yet. I haven't really trusted my legs, but I'm starting to get back to normal stuff. I do cook. I do laundry. I haven't been to the store yet. I think that's where I actually got COVID. So, I'm a little hesitant there. But when I do go out, I do have my mask with me.
Can I ask, do you have the antibody, Cliff?
Do I have what?
The antibody.
Oh, yeah, that I
Okay.
do. They
And,
made sure I knew that.
and Chief?
I'm not exactly sure, but I was still going to go down. I noticed, was it yesterday or day before? I did some research because I heard on the news that they're asking for folks to come forward. The problem, and Cliff can attest to this as well. Those tests are so inconclusive. Those tests, I mean, sometimes there's false positives, and there's other times where people are diagnosed and they have all the symptoms and it's coming back as negative. And, I've heard others that, potentially, came out of this completely healed up, and they're not positive for the antibodies. So I think some of the testing is some of the issues as well. And real quick, Becky, on a side note, tell Mike I said hello.
All right, Jude.
Okay.
We have reached the witching hour.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you want to call it that, but I guess you can.
Well, all right. Let's not call it that. Let's not call it that. Let's just say we got to 1 o'clock.
Yes. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here. Again, if you want to test, you can go down to the Pepsi Center right now. They really want people to take the test to see if you thought you had it or whatever. They can, I believe that's what they're going to do. Is it's not just the COVID test, but if you actually had it and have the antibody. The reality is, there's been, in my own family, I had a son, Denver Fire Department, had the COVID, Zach. Very interesting. We felt our daughter Nicole had it. She actually had more serious symptoms, but they then told her she couldn't come and get a test at the time. And so she was never tested, but actually she went and saw a natural, doctor. And basically this doctor said, you just need to know you had this. So what happened was Sal, who's her husband, which is a captain of the Denver Fire Department on a house somewhere, they wanted to test their whole platoon. So they went and everybody to get tested for the antibody, which means you had the COVID, you no longer have it, and now you have the antibody. That's the process. But what happened was everybody in his platoon tested negative, which means they didn't have the COVID, except for Sal. Sal actually had it, and he was probably more asymptomatic. And probably that's how Nicole got it, who never got tested. And probably that's what Nicole's just trying to get tested now, because I'm sure she has the antibody because Sal actually had the antibody. So yeah, and so we have to live in a very wise time. This is a reality. I just got yesterday a text. We have a dear friend. His name is Encarnacion, which means incarnation. This is our series, Incarnational Leadership. And Encarnacion was an engineer. He a very beautiful man, who was teaching math to our GED students from probably 2012 to 2015, just passed away from the COVID this last week. At the same time, he has a brother who actually lives in Mexico who passed away from the COVID a month ago. So his brother who lives in Mexico died of the COVID a month, and then now Encarnacion, who lives here in the United States and in Denver, passed away this last week. Yeah, this is one of those things that we just have to pray and watch out for each other. I think there were some really good Chief and Cliff, your stories were amazing. Your bravery was amazing. Your ability to articulate what has happened has been very helpful. We have this recorded. It will go up on our website as a YouTube. I'll make sure it happens before the end of the day. And next week, we will pick up on this series, the critical incarnation, the critical series of during this COVID. And we are going to talk about racism next week. The angle we're going to take has to do with leadership. And so we will have some surprise people who will, our leaders, one will be African, one will be Latino, and one will be white. The question is, where is good leadership happening around our country? Not only in our country, but around the world, by the way. So that will be next week's series. So I'm going to just close this in prayer. And again, Jeff, thank you so much for navigating a great conversation. Thank you so much. Sorry you're having problems with your.
Oh man, I'll try to. I have a hand crank internet, so I'll have to fix that.
Yeah, you might have to increase your bandwidth.
Yeah, no kidding. In just about every way.
And Joe, my brother Joe, thank you for being on this call and hearing some of the angles. You didn't ask a question. I mean, you had some great comments on the chat, but yeah, I hope we answered most of your questions.
And real quick, Jude, before you say the prayer, I just want to echo someone's comment. I believe it was Joseph's, that I give you the utmost props tackling these tough issues. The fact that you do not steer away from them and you have some honest dialogue from folks that can provide honest dialogue. I just want to commend you on that.
Yeah, thank you. That's why I have Jeff doing it, because he's better at navigating the conversation. But we do have to learn how to dialogue. We do have to learn how to talk about these difficult things if we're going to be serious about it, if we're really going to see change, if we're really going to see a shift of things, if we're really going to see how faith interacts in our world, in our culture, individually and in our churches or on the street, it has to be real. And so your stories today were real. It's really good to, the reality is in life, there's been, there's always been a struggle with our faith. There's always been that time, or there's a dynamic where people struggle with their faith. And it's not to what's wrong with you? Don't you have any faith? I mean, I don't know about you, but I had people on my Facebook to say, I'm not worried about the virus because I have Jesus. Now, what do you think of that? What do you think, Cliff?
That's a joke.
What do you think, Chief?
Well, I have Jesus too, and I still had COVID too.
Well, is it because you didn't have faith?
It wasn't because I didn't have faith.
That is abuse. That is abuse of twisting things. So that's next week. We're going to carry on with a very, a very important issue. But I'm going to close this in prayer. Father, thank you for today. Thank you that you are there with us. Thank you, you were there
Yes, Lord.
with Chief,
Yes,
Thank
Lord.
you. Yeah.
and his family.
Yes, Lord.
Lord, we didn't even talk about how others around them felt in their fear and their concern.
Yes.
But I'm sure they were in that place of wondering what was going to happen. And you were there for them. Lord, I want to thank you for being there with Cliff, my friend. I remember so vibrant and, again, singing those rap songs, rapping in Spanish. Endless energy. One who's worked his butt off with the post office this whole time. Lord, you're a good God, and you made us to be a reflection of your love. Help us to have wisdom in everything we do. Help us to have faith, true faith in you,
Yes, Lord.
not in ourselves.
No.
But we do thank you for, Lord, how you give us grace, Lord, and where we lacked that faith, and where Chief and Cliff were like, did not sure if they wanted to go on. But Lord, that's where you came, is you just gently put your hands right underneath them and said, I got you.
Yes, Lord.
So Lord, be with us this week. Be in our cities. Lord, my brother Joe, who's right in the thick of it in LA. Mo, who's in, where are you at again, Mo?
Phoenix.
Phoenix. I don't know if any writing is happening in Phoenix, but the Lord be with you and be there in your city and in Denver here. You know, we need the grace of God to fall on all of us. We need his light to shine through us.
Yes, Lord.
And we need that message of hope and good news. And as even Joe asked at the beginning, and when Jeff said, be thinking about the kingdom, what does that mean? Whew, Lord, that is an amazing question, because it is about your kingdom. Well, you said like to consider like the Beatitudes, which embraces humility, which embraces servanthood, which embraces laying down our life for the sake of others. Lord, these are the fruit of the kingdom of God, and we just pray that you would help us to be kingdom in the way we think, and not our own kingdom, and not a nationalism, but Lord, that which is you first, your kingdom that lasts forever. It says that kingdoms come and kingdoms go here on the earth, but your kingdom lasts forever. So that's what we pray for. Lord, we've been inspired today, and be with us. In your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Hey, Jeff, thank you as well.
Yeah. Jeff, where'd he go?
Cranking it up.
That's that Uncle Murphy. If you're something or teaching a course,
Yeah.
show up during those times. So
Okay. All right. Well, hey, there you are. Hey, anybody, if you have a final comment, if you want to hang out, you can go. But like, if you have something to say to or a question for those guys, you sure can, or else you could just, drop off.
thanks, everyone. Hey, be safe.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Take care.
Amen.
Thanks,
Bye.
Joe.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
very
Mo.
much.
Good to see you, man.
You.
You've been to the Czech Republic lately?
I've not been recently. Thankfully, my friends there are strict, and so they've been keeping me in tabs or in touch as far as what's happening there, and yeah, it's definitely not what's the word? The virus is definitely not discriminatory.
Yeah. Yeah. And Mo, you mentioned on the side here, you had a friend in Breckenridge who had the COVID. Who
Yeah,
has
I
it
didn't
now?
even. He's good now. I didn't know he had it until he actually posted the day that he was like, I don't think I can take anymore. And I was like,
Wow.
whoa, what's going on? And I found out later.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah. And as far
And
as here, like, we're not hearing, at least I'm not hearing a lot of cases here. And I know that in our family, we're just trying to be careful that people aren't relying on the sun,
Yeah.
because that's kind of one of the things people are thinking is that um, with us getting more sunlight that we're less prone. So
Yeah, I think one of the things it proves is that even a worldwide virus doesn't want to go to Phoenix in the summer.
Well, well, the crazy thing is, when you ask the question about it affecting certain nationalities more, well, obviously, I think to me, in the major metropolitan cities, it's a lot of your service workers, a lot of those who are out there that can't get away from what they're doing.
Right.
The other factor is like, we got to consider this. This is an epidemic that is like all over the world. So, all the brown people in Mexico got it, all the white people in England got it, all the, so it was very interesting that it was no respecter of race and by no means. But anyway, again, Cliff, man, thank you for being on
Yeah,
and
Cliff,
telling your story. You're so brave.
and I just appreciate it so much, brother. I haven't seen you in a long time, and your
Yeah.
story is heartbreaking, and your courage in dealing with it is very inspiring. And I know that probably sounds a little bit, like maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm just giving you my impression. Is that I'm amazed. Great work.
That is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Cliff, I really believe that God's going to give you more opportunities to tell your story, and it'll help people with their faith. It'll help people with their trust in God. It'll help people to realign what they think is valuable to things that are more valuable. And to ultimately realizing that, my hands in my life are in the hands of the Lord. And that is a message that needs to be shared today. So God strengthen you from every fiber in your body to every part of your mind and your spirit. And God has something for you for sure.
Amen.
Right.
Amen to that.
Amen. So bye everybody.
See you, boys.
Hey, just so you guys know, my brother is here, and I just really appreciate that he was on.